10th, 1999. We're at the home of Marguerite Silsby to do oral history with her for the Roscommon Area Historical Society.
This is Marguerite Silsby, and I give my permission to use this material for the Historical Society.
Because I didn't say my name. I'm Carol Garlow, and Agnes McCready is also here to augment this. Okay, let's start, Marguerite, with where you were born.
I was born in Lapeer, Michigan. My father was Walter Sangster, Scotch. His parents were born overseas in Scotland. My mother was French, Lapeer. She married my dad when she was about 19, and she lived in Charlevoix, and they moved down to Detroit, and my father worked at the Ford Motor Company until he was injured, and he spent 2 years with TV before he died. And he left. We were moving into a brand new house. We had moved into the garage in the back of the lot, and the new house was being built in front. We moved into the new house in June. The fifth baby was born, and in August my father died, and in September my mother went to work for Ford Motor Company, where she worked for the next probably 25 years.
Wow. How old were you when your father died?
I was 9 years old. I was the oldest of 5 girls, no boys. Tracing my mother's genealogy, her father, Joseph Lapeer, was born in the cottage in Mackinac Island that is now at the fort that was moved there just a couple of years ago. So, and his father was born there.
For heaven's sake, that's neat.
Yes. So we've done the genealogy on my mother's side of the family. Neither one of my parents probably went further than the 8th grade, if that. And all of us girls, 4 of us girls, graduated from high school, and one went to business school. The 5th baby died 2 years after my father died.
Oh.
So
then what were you doing when you met Ford?
Well, during the war I was Rosie the Riveter. And then I went in on inspection at Briggs, and then I went to Chrysler and was on inspection. And Ford was also working at Chrysler in the tool and die shop during the war.
Oh, okay.
And then he went into service, and when he came back he worked at Chrysler's, and I quit. It was either here or me. Because he'd been gone a long time, and he found it very nerve-wracking when he came home. He wasn't the same person.
Were you already married?
Yes, we were married.
You got married before he went in service?
Yes, we were married 4 years.
Before he was drafted?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We were married longer than that. Well, it was 9 years altogether. When we moved up here in 46, and we had Loretta that year. We'd been married 9 years when she was born. Oh. She was the only child we had. And then we bought the building where Sherwin has the camera shop, or the little building next to St. Vincent de Paul Society.
You mean Ed's building?
Mm-hmm. And we were going to make a dime store, and we spent a week in Chicago buying stuff at the Ben Franklin store. And months later, the fellow came through and told us we couldn't make a living on it. Can you imagine that?
The Ben Franklin man told you that?
Yes. Well, shortly after that, Paul went into that little dinky dime store, and he made a living.
Yeah.
So by June, we were thinking of going back to Detroit. Of course, I was working hard. I was a city gal.
And your family was still downstate?
Yes.
Your sisters?
Yeah, and when we moved up, well, we bought, they had Woody and Ford had a chance to buy the Saba's business.
It was already a business?
Yes, it was only half a store at that time, and it was who's the doctor? You remember that owned the store? It was a doctor from down below owned that store, and people down Granlund
Granlund.
operated it.
Oh, okay.
And then we bought it, and he was having trouble with, they had a Chicago company for drugs, and it wasn't doing good business here, so we had to drop that company. No, it's a big company. I can't think of the name, it doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, we took the store over and Ford operated it. That was the
And it was
agreement.
already a drugstore?
No, it was never a drugstore
Oh,
until these people
recently.
took it.
Oh, okay. What kind of store was it?
It was general merchandise, and we sold a lot of souvenirs and drugs.
Dry goods.
Yeah, souvenirs and dry sweatshirts and toys and some drugs.
Mhm.
You know, not prescription drugs.
Mhm.
And then
And you lived was that upstairs apartment already there?
yes, we moved up there for a year and a half, I think it was, and then we moved down here to 7th Street.
I have, now, I remember Ford saying that this house came from South Branch Ranch originally. Did you get it from there, or was it already here?
No, Ben Richardson, Ben and Bernice Richardson bought the house and did remodeled it to some degree.
So they're the ones that had it moved from South Branch Ranch to here?
Evidently, they were the first owners of it, as far as I know. And that was probably in 42 or 43.
Okay.
So then
Then you bought it from Ben Richardson?
Yeah, in 1946, 47. No, but it'd be 48. Loretta was 2 years old.
Okay.
So Ford retired when he was 59
So he stayed running that store?
for the next 25 years.
Great.
And he retired at 59, and then we spent our time between here and Florida, a few trips to California. That was it.
Okay. Let's talk about the theater and Ford's mother. Ford's mother. See, I get them
Maud.
confused.
No.
Maud,
Mhm.
okay.
Ford was a little guy, you know, when he was young,
Mhm.
and he used to take care of the generators, and he used to sell the Detroit Free Press. Lillian Higgins' older sister, Lucille, used to say that he used to go down on the main street, and she lived over the bakery, and she'd say, "Detroit Free Press." She said, "We'll take a free press." But he used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go take care of those generators and keep them running to keep the theaters, if they had it, you know.
Now, that was when he was like a teenager.
Yeah, well, he was a young
Yeah,
teenager.
or 12 or 13.
Well, he was always saving his money.
So you said he was born in 1912. So when they had the theater in the 30s. No, that's not right. See, I get all confused.
I didn't think to figure it out that way.
Yeah, that's all right. Was Ford born here?
No, Ford was born in California, in Highland Park, Michigan, on California's streets called California.
Oh,
As a
okay.
matter of fact, I think Grandpa Henry built their house for them.
Oh, okay.
There comes Henry again.
Yeah. Ford's father is Fred, and his father is Henry Silsby. And Ford's parents, both of their last names were Silsby. His mother was
Because
Maud.
Ford's father was adopted by Isaac Silsby.
His grandfather.
But he was a Hillbrook before.
Okay. Okay. And Ford and his brother and sister grew up in Roscommon.
They came back here when Ford was about 7 years old. So Fern would be probably 10. I think there's about
Fern
3
is the
years
oldest?
between them.
Okay.
and Sandy was just a little baby when his father died. And when Mom died in Ford's first year of college, which would probably be, he'd graduate in 30, that would be 4 years before, probably 5 years before, because he stopped for a year. That would be 1925. And 1925 she died, and then Sandy went and lived with Uncle Hugh and Aunt Ethel. And she had 4 boys too. He was sheriff of Oklahoma County for 16 years. And of course they took care of the prison too.
Hugh was.
Yeah.
Hugh
Well, you want all
Silsby.
this on there.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Hugh was a brother to Fred.
Fred.
Okay. That was a big family. It says there were 5 boys and 3 girls.
The first woman he married had 5 boys, and the second woman brought 2 girls to the union. She'd been married, and her husband died, and she brought 2 girls. And then between the 2 of them, they had Aunt Emma that just died here a couple years ago.
Oh, okay. When you and your husband started, or you said that he did that store with Woody
Yeah.
Lockley, who was his cousin.
It was a partnership.
First cousin. It was a partnership. They both owned it?
It was half and half. After we had the store several years, we bought the building from, who used to live in the house down here? Do you remember the people who lived there originally?
Which house?
The house right down on the water almost. You know, it goes around the corner. Houses had it for a while, but there's, I don't know. It's right here, you know.
Cornets?
Huh?
Cornets?
No.
Well, so you own,
buildings on the, yeah, I can't remember.
you owned that building, so this is after, at one time that was a Roscommon State Bank, years ago. Wasn't it, that corner building? Oh, I thought it was.
No.
Let's see, I don't know.
Next door was the post office. The state bank was over there in the corner.
Yeah, but that's not its first site.
It isn't? Well, that's the first
No.
site that I know, so you'll have to find somebody.
Yeah, I
from
think
there.
that,
Now Percy Lehman would be a good one to check up
right,
on.
and that picture we have of the bank in 1882, I thought it was on that corner.
Oh, could be, could be.
The McCready store, wasn't it?
Could be.
Across the street from the McCready
Yeah,
store.
and I
where it
understand,
was.
that's the same building you're talking about, the
Yeah.
brick building that is now Sabo Drugs.
Yeah, that's where it was.
Okay, yeah, so that
See,
was.
I don't remember any of that, because I wasn't here at that time.
So who did you sell, then when he retired, did you sell that building
We sold
and
it
the business,
to
or what?
Mr. and Mrs.
Babbis. Babbis.
Babbis.
Babbis.
B-A-B-I-S.
Okay,
Judith
Joyce.
Babbis.
And,
Okay, so you had it all that time before that. Great. Tell,
and
what,
between Woody and Ford, I mean, it was an equal partnership.
of the whole 25 years?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Okay. What other things do you remember about Roscommon when you first came here? Did you like it?
Silly question. When we came here, we had the fountain and we had sugar rationing. Every month I had to pick up the darn sugar rationing. You couldn't get a piece of meat if you'd wanted it. And it was,
Because of the war?
yeah.
Yeah. So it was
Warren
a rough
Dunham
time.
was real nice. He finally saved me a ham bone once in a while or something. He was
There were
real
hard
nice to
times
me.
then.
Mhm.
When you
He
came.
was originally in the store next to us, and we bought him out, and he went around on the other side, and was it Fifth Street? And we took over his building, which belonged to Woody's father, and Woody inherited it. And we paid the full price for buying it, tearing it down, and they built the present store, added on to the present store. Ford did all the drawing of the blueprints and everything, and he oversaw them building it too. So that it was
Which direction are you on? Fifth Street? So what
No,
came?
it was on Lake.
Lake Street. We were on Lake
Oh.
Street, right on the corner, and Dunham's were right next door.
Oh, okay, so
we
you
bought
incorporated all
that
that.
building belonged. Yes, that was just before Esther's building.
Oh, okay.
And it was
And
Lockwood's
at that
grocery
time, the
store.
post office was right next door to us.
And that's what was torn down, the building that,
Dunham's
Dunham's
building,
building.
yes, that was a little wooden building. So then we built the second half of the Roscommon store.
oh, okay.
I don't remember just how long we've been.
It was Lockwood's grocery store. It was next to, wasn't it?
But it's,
He tore
yeah.
down. Woody's.
His father, He had it for years.
Yeah.
See, I don't remember that, a Lockridge grocery store.
Ford's,
It was between the corner building and the, and what is now the second hand.
Second time around.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ford's
Okay.
brother Sandy
Mhm.
taught school here. He went.
Oh.
He graduated from. He did part of his work at Ypsilanti College, and he graduated from U of M.
Oh.
And Margie took a nurse's course during the war. Well, they lived in Ypsilanti, and Sandy was going to school. Margie worked in the hotel on the children's floor, and Sandy would come home and take care of Charlie. And by the time they had their second child, I think they were up here, and I think they came to Roscommon shortly after that. He worked for Holtz. He was here about 6 or 7 years. He taught 6th grade, and he was very well liked.
Yeah.
But he and Holtz had different ideas. Sandy had a lot of new ideas from school, and Holtz wouldn't. That was the idea, that Holtz wouldn't let him put him into, and it upset Sandy. So they bought the hotel on the corner, the Roscommon Hotel, from Woody, and they tried to make a living, which was poor.
That's one that's now the Spruce.
That's, yeah.
Was Margie from Roscommon?
No.
No.
Margie was from Chicago. Her folks were Mr. and Mrs. Hines, which were very lovely people.
So they met in college or whatever?
No, Margie came up with a friend to visit for a week or so, and in coming up, she met Sandy. 2 weeks later, we got a notice that they were getting married. So
Oh my goodness, this was a
So-
whirlwind deal.
they still married.
Uh-huh.
And then they had the 3 kids, and in 19.
So their children were born in Roscommon?
Yes.
Mhm.
No, Charlie was born at Ypsilanti. Celeste and Tommy would have been born here.
Okay.
And then Tommy was real small when they decided to move out to California.
So they, when they didn't do well with the hotel, is that when they left Roscommon?
That's when they went out to California.
Did he ever go back to teaching?
Oh, he did counseling out there. He did
cool.
Sandy took enough credits to had a doctrine behind him, but he never got him in the right sequence, so he paid $300 for one course and never even got it registered. But so, I mean, shipping around, that was part of his troubles. No, he did counseling, and Margie worked for the Navy for a long time as a nurse, and she traveled a lot. And she and another friend, she worked from out of the what's the name of the town down to California? San Diego for a long time. She is on a retirement, so is Sandy. Then in 1994, they had just moved from Darwin on the east side of the west side of California over to the east side to Darwin, to Bobfish. When they were moved a month when Sandy was stricken. And they never did find out what caused it. So,
And he's paralyzed.
and he's paralyzed from the waist down.
Well, that's
But
too
you know,
bad.
after all these 4 years, he's still got a nice outlook on life. And
Oh,
Margie's,
good.
they've had a good life.
Mhm.
Their kids have been good.
Now Ford's sister Fern,
Fern.
she stayed in Roscommon.
Fern's she took her course in secretary and stenographer and what have you, I think down in Lansing, and she lived with Uncle Hugh and Aunt Ethel for a while. Willard used to go down and court her.
Oh.
But they got married in Roscommon. That was
Uh-huh.
before I came up. I was married.
Mhm.
Of course, they were a little bit older. And they moved to Roscommon. They've been here, and they had both their girls here. Of course, they lost 2 children. The first baby was a boy born dead, and the second one was killed on the highway in front of the gas station.
Oh, how terrible.
Well, 5 years old, you know how they run on the road, you
Oh,
don't even
yeah.
have a chance.
Oh,
It was kind of a
terrible.
heartbreak for the man that did it too.
Oh, I'm sure. And then your daughter, she graduated from high school here then.
She went on to
What year did she
State.
graduate?
She graduated in 1964.
Okay.
No, she graduated from, yeah, it must be
Mhm.
1964. She was married in 1969.
Mhm.
She graduated in social work. She worked at Hawthorne Center for about 6.5 years.
Mm.
She liked it.
Mhm.
She
Does she
worked-
come back to Roscommon often? Does she have friends?
No.
No.
All her friends are down there.
They all moved
And
away.
it
Yeah.
breaks my heart. There's a half a dozen of them within driving range of one another. Not any of them see one another.
Oh.
They had 13 years together in the same classes, and
Mm.
I don't understand it.
Oh. Maybe when they get a little older.
They're old enough.
So what kinds of, did you work in the store with Ford?
Not until after Loretta was in high school. I
Mhm.
worked in the summers just helping, and Loretta also worked during her, from the time she was 14, she worked a half a day washing windows and what have you. She was very humiliated until she found out the kids in town would just soon do it themselves. They thought that was big stuff.
Uh-huh. Well, that's
Funny
neat.
how kids are, you know?
Yeah. What was your church affiliation here?
It's always been First Congregational Church.
So you've been a member there a long time.
Dr. Reverend Thomas was the first minister that was here when I came.
Thomas Ward,
Pardon?
Thomas Ward.
Yeah, War. Oh, that's right, it's War.
What do you remember about, do you remember anything about the Galmer boarding house?
No.
That was already done when you were here.
No, yeah. Ford and, what's the boy's name? Her son.
Don Emery.
Don. We're very good
Grandson.
friends. They grew up together.
Oh, okay.
And there was somebody else chummed with them. I don't remember, but I know that Ford and Don and several of the,
They hung out, huh?
yeah, more or less.
Would have been Dwayne McGuinness.
I doubt it. It was
Okay.
more Lily.
It talks in here about transportation. What do you remember about when you first came here? What was Roscommon like? Were there a lot of tourists already then, or you were right after the war?
They came up on the train, a lot of them. Coming up was almost an overnight job, wasn't
They
it?
came up from Chicago at that time, didn't they? Most of the
A
people
lot
that
of them
came up were
from
Chicago people.
Mhm. And they came by train.
Mm-hmm.
A lot
Yeah.
of them came by train.
And I don't remember,
That
it
was-
just seems like everybody had a car, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember that Helen, I can't think of her last, Patrick? No. Anyway, Helen pulled up to the drugstore, or we called it a drugstore, it wasn't, and left her car running, came in to get the newspaper. When she went out, the car was gone. It was back in early when we first took the store over.
Oh, my God. Did she ever get it back?
I don't remember. It just seems to me it was down south and it was wrecked, but I can't be sure.
Uh-huh. What were the others, what were the stores going down Fifth Street from your store? From
There's
Ford and Wood's store?
our store and the
Was
post
the hardware
office.
store, no, going down
Post
Fifth
office.
Street?
Oh,
Emma?
going down towards where the Roscommon hardware store is now. Was that already a
that
hardware?
was, originally,
Rutland's?
it was, men's shop with, Anna and Bob McGinnis.
It was the other way. It was on Lake Street.
Well,
Like what was across from Green's Tavern, down that street?
well, this is what I'm thinking of. It's, Dunham had a grocery store there, but before that, I think that Bob McGinnis had his men's store. He did. Because one day he called Ford and said, I think that's your kid out there in the road. And there was Ann Freeman and Loretta on their tricycles out there watching the light out in the middle of the road.
They had the men's store where the Wear Again stores, where the Second Time Around stories, and that burned. Remember when Steiny and McGinnis had it for a while? Wasn't Steiny and Bob McGinnis and Granlund had it for a while?
Yes. Was there hardware next door then, or?
No, what was next door? I don't know if it was at during your time, but what was next door for a while was a restaurant. And didn't Laura Kemp and her mother have a restaurant in there for a while?
Before my
It
time.
Must have been before your time.
Because there was,
And Virginia and the Hansons had a restaurant in there.
Where the party store is now?
Mm-hmm. And then Dunham, I think, took it over and had a.
that belonged to Sam Golick. Sam Golick worked for us
Yeah.
for a long time. He was very crippled. He had it.
But he built the new building.
Mm-hmm. And that was
Building,
his,
and that's when it became Dunham's store, and with
Mhm.
the apartment above that Sammy lived in.
Mhm.
What is Sammy's last name, are you saying?
Golnick.
Golnick. How do you spell that?
G-O-L-N-I-C, I think.
Yeah.
it
Oh,
is.
Golnick, okay.
Yeah. Golnick. There's quite a few Golnicks here at one
Mhm.
time.
Yeah, I've heard the name. Then where the Roscommon hardware store is now, is that a new building? Was that not there?
The Rutledges built that building after that whole block burned down, remember?
I wasn't here when the block blew down.
Okay.
So,
The
because
Rutledge's
Stewart's
store burned?
Stewart's Hardware was there when we came in '46.
Oh, yes, well,
So I don't know.
this was in the 30s when it burned. And the hardware store burned, and the beauty shop burned, and
Actually, I don't remember.
several stores burned.
Of course, the road across where
Oh,
the
and-
hardware, or Roscommon Hardware, that burned at one time too, didn't it? The whole block. Where you had your store?
That's the block I'm talking about.
Oh,
And then the Rutledges built,
No, I'm
We're-
talking about, we're going down.
I know, but that's when they built that new hardware store that's there now. Rutledge's built that.
Oh, okay.
what was on the corner? Oh,
The Colonial was on the corner.
yeah,
Mhm,
Colonial's been on
mhm,
the corner
mhm.
for quite a number of years.
Mhm,
Huh?
mhm.
What year is it?
In the 30s, I think.
That was moved over there in the 30s.
Yeah, in the
That was
30s.
moved in the
Mhm.
30s?
Mhm. I believe it. Says
And
Colonial Motel was. From 1934 to 54. Oh yeah, but that doesn't say when it got moved. I think you told that.
Okay, I don't remember. I doubt it. Was. I didn't come across anything in it that's...
It said Maud and Blanche's father, Charles E. Silsby,
Oh,
built the theater at the site of the present walk-in clinic and had it 3 years when Charles died. It was a theater a couple more years, then became the Colonial Hotel and was run by Blanche and Maud. And then, in the winter of 1933 and 34, it was moved on sled runners. This is from the notes I took when I talked to Ford a couple
okay.
years ago.
Mhm.
Woodrow was 18 at the time in his third year of college because he had graduated from high school when he was only 16. So then he came and I understood that he came and started to run the hotel then with his mother.
And then he moved it over there, and then he put the beer garden, which was the beer
Cocktail.
which was kind of a sore point when it had blacks, but it was what made
Made it go.
yeah. I think it made the town quite a bit too.
Well,
'cause
it says
brought
in
a lot of people.
1938 and 39, they renamed it the Colonial Hotel and Cocktail Lounge and booked musicians from Chicago and Detroit.
Oh, we used to have great dances there.
Did you go dancing there, Agnes?
Not in my young years.
When you were a little older?
I married a man who didn't dance.
Oh.
So I went dancing in my 50s.
Oh, well, that was pretty good.
It seemed like after we moved here, whenever anybody got married, everybody went to the weddings.
Mm-hmm.
Remember they had them out at the log cabin, they had them up here at the Rebecca Lodge, and
It was a big event when someone got married.
oh, sure, everybody
Chance
went.
to party, sure.
So,
Okay. We kind of got away from the church activities. What all do you remember about the church when you first came here? And what,
oh, it was a little church. How it grew. A little church.
was it still the stone church?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. More than once, Winnie and I scrubbed that hardwood basement floor. And we had Bible class, and at that time we had Bible class for 2 weeks. We didn't have it 1 week. You know, and I remember the time we made a girl a big pot of paper mache and made a whole section of religious houses and things, and how that stuff smelled, but oh, it turned out so nice.
Made a little village, huh?
Yeah,
Neat.
this was,
You mean the summer vacation Bible school, you mean?
Mhm.
Yeah,
no,
it was for 2 whole weeks.
we had it for 2 whole weeks. We didn't have goodies in between very often. Oh, I'm sure we had Kool-Aid, but
Uh-huh.
they big treats.
Uh-huh.
It was more business, but the kids liked it.
Sure.
I remember coming in this basement one day, and here's Butch Cornett, 4 years old, dancing on the table, and I said, Butch! He said, sorry, not again. And the Ford served usher for some time, on and off during the time. Lillian and I had Sunday school for a while in the new church.
Mm.
Financially, I think most of us got a good hold on the church and the parsonage. Because every time they needed money, they just put their hands out. It
Mhm.
seemed to come.
Sure.
And that's how we grew that.
Well, that congregation has steadily grown over the years, hasn't
We
it?
need more people, though.
Need more growth now, huh?
We have, yeah, one thing, we had good attendance, but a lot of those people were Methodists that came here. There was no Methodist church. Well, since there's a Methodist church, they've left us to go to the Methodist church.
Oh. Mhm. Mhm. Did you often get, or how often would you get to go back to visit your sisters? Was that a big trip?
No, down to
You
Detroit.
would just go and you did it frequently?
Yeah, we try to make more or less holidays. Although when we had the store, usually my younger sister and her husband came up because they had no children, and Loretta was the apple of their eye.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as time went on, Loretta was down there with my mother when she was ailing, and with my younger sister Kay and Frank. So they had a very close relationship then. And my other sisters are scattered, and
Mm-hmm.
out of the 4 of us, there's only 2 of us living today. My
Oh.
one sister lives in Tennessee with her husband and their youngest daughter and her husband,
Oh.
and myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting a little thin.
Yeah, yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens. Well, I'm trying to think of anything else, because you did not go to school here. I think, is there anything else that we need to talk about that you can tell us about Roscommon? What was the main entertainment when you first came, in your early years when Loretta was young? Were your activities mainly with the church group, or?
That church didn't do a lot together, did we?
Not much. We had ice cream socials.
Yeah, it
Made
was always the money.
homemade ice cream.
I swear everything was a money-making project. For the longest time, I just absolutely refused to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just for the fun of it, it was.
So-
I'll clean your house, but don't ask me to solicit for money.
Yeah, so what were your social, what did you and Ford do?
Well, we did a lot of bridge playing.
Oh, card
Oh, yeah, there was a
And
lot
there
of
was
bridge
a lot
clubs.
of just visiting back and forth
Yeah.
and dinner
We'd have
parties.
dinner
We'd have
parties,
people for
right.
dinner.
Yeah.
That's what we did. We just
Yeah.
visited.
And we had the theater at that time.
Yeah.
We went to
Mhm.
basketball games. We put Loretta
Yeah.
in the
Basketball
Hall and
games and the show, that was it.
we put Loretta in the buggy in the hall at the school. The noise didn't bother her. She slept right through it.
Mhm.
Nobody stole her. Those days you didn't think of anybody stealing them.
Right.
I
Yeah,
like
that's
looking
new.
at them.
Yeah, you
We
are.
watched,
Oh, Sunday nights, I can remember cars leaving town and we all went out to country to count deer. Because the
Oh.
deer were all in the farm, in the fields.
Uh-huh.
And I can remember 5 or 6 cars parked there beside the road, and they count 40, 50, 60 deer in
Oh,
the,
my.
just herds of them, out by the Richardson farms and like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was our Sunday night
Yeah, that was your-
entertainment.
Uh-huh, well,
well,
that's
between
good.
watching, listening to the radio and the
We
shadow.
listened to
and all-
radio, yeah,
Oh, and what was there was always a show on Sunday night. I forget what it's
yeah.
called.
Oh, it was
now. Oh, we were in the midst
Major
of
Falls, was that it, Sunday
it.
night?
Wasn't even dirty.
Well, that's good. And you enjoyed it all. You all enjoyed it.
Yeah, we went to the show almost every Sunday night. If it was
And
anything.
your store was not open on Sundays. Did you have
No,
Sunday
we were
off?
always open. The only
You
day we
were.
didn't open was Christmas Day, and if the
Are you
newspaper, if it
kidding?
was on Sunday, we opened till noon, till the newspapers were gone, and that was it.
Are you
That was the
kidding?
only day we ever closed.
Wow.
It did make it hard for us to go down.
Well,
And I
yeah.
did go down. Loretta and I went down below to visit quite often, but
Mhm.
Ford didn't always get to go.
Mhm.
You
Then I
were open till 9 too, weren't you?
10.
10?
The girls that were of 16 or under had to quit at 9 o'clock. They couldn't work till at 9 o'clock. They had to quit.
Mhm.
So I'd go down and work the last hour, and they'd go out and dancing at the Houghton Lake.
Uh-huh.
They were too young to work, but
Mhm.
And after every basketball game and after every show, like on Sunday night,
Mhm.
basketball game during the week, we'd all go to Ford's and Marguerite's for a hot cup of coffee before we go home. That was a busy hour.
Did you have a soda?
We had a
fountain?
fountain.
Yeah, they had a good
Oh,
soda
there was a
fountain.
soda fountain.
oh yeah.
Oh.
We sold coffee for a nickel a cup, and then it went to 8 cents, and everybody hollered, and then it went to 10 cents, and they really hollered, and we had a Sunday for soda for 15 cents, and it went to
Really?
a quarter. We didn't even listen.
Oh, I guess.
I
Isn't
mean,
that something?
prices kept climbing all the way
Sure.
through. And today, when I think of a soda's $1.25, they don't even put
$1.69
they don't
or-
even put whipped cream in it like we used to.
Oh.
We used to put real whipped cream in it.
Oh, I bet it was wonderful. So your store, I'm hearing more about the store. It really was quite the place then. It was right, you had
Was
the
it?
best location.
When we built the second half, Ford had it decorated in, the top part was a plum color, wasn't it? I remember it was so, and he had a soft green ceiling. It was very
It was
showy.
pretty.
It was
And
very,
all
very
the time
pretty.
that you had that was the highway
Yes,
already. So you
Yes,
had
we-
you had the through traffic, because that was before the freeway.
of course, at that time, St. Helen didn't have anything.
Mhm.
They did all the grocery shopping here at A&P. So you're down from our corner, on the other corner was A&P.
Where Dan Fisher
Walter
is now?
Johnson. Yeah, our store is here, Sherwood owns it now. Our store was here and the A&P was here. John Sherman has this store now that he does typing, printing.
Dan Fischel.
Oh, was that
You
it?
mean,
Oh,
yeah.
pardon me.
Yeah,
All
okay,
right.
that's the one I meant.
That
That's
was,
the one I
that
thought you
was,
meant. That was the antique
wasn't it a
store.
wooden building at the
I
time?
don't remember.
I remember they moved down to where Glenn's is, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then we were in there that day before they moved, and Loretta went along and took all the signs off of 2 layers. I was so hard, I felt so bad, and Walter says, "Oh, don't worry about it, Mrs. Ford." That's what he always called me.
Mrs. Ford.
Because they had left them there purposely so they could mark their merchandise. She was just trying to help me get things.
Helping with the move. Okay, well, is there anything else about Roscommon that you need to tell us? Size of the town, streets. What kind of cars did you drive?
We had a 1937 Chevy. I think we paid $300 for it before Ford went into service, and I could have sold it any time during the war, but I needed transportation
Mm-hmm.
to get to work because I worked all the time. And we came up here, and the first year we had it, Ford went to Saginaw and put $500 worth of candy. And the only candy bar that we have on the market today was Heath Candy. They were all, he bought anything that was candy. We had, whenever anybody came through with chocolate or anything, see, this is still war,
Mm-hmm.
he would buy it, and he stacked up about half a dozen cases of chocolate upstairs, which wasn't the best of chocolate. And one of them exploded until the day we left, and it was, the marks were still there.
Oh my
You know, they had a
gosh.
stock room upstairs to take care of the
The excess.
surplus.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And what did you say when he went to Saginaw and filled the car with candy bars?
Well, when he came back, it would be $500 worth of candy, and they lasted one day. People were so hungry for sweets and everything, you couldn't
Isn't that
hardly buy
expensive?
cigarettes at that time, you know, you had to
Mhm.
stand in line for them. And I remember we stood in line and got some coffee cigarettes one time for 15 cents a package.
Wow. Wow. Well, where were your main suppliers from? Did people come through selling stuff, or did you
Most
have
of
to?
them, yes. We
Mhm.
had candy companies and everything else that came through, but during the war, well, this was when Ford first started until he didn't always have these men until after he got
It
into
was
business.
established. Mhm.
They're very shy of you, new business, whether you can.
Make it, yeah.
This is one thing that was hard for Joyce. Her husband killed her business the first 2 years they were there, which was real hard for her, but she did a nice job of doing it.
She
So.
did. She always was cheerful.
She did got all 5 of those kids through school.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's terrific.
Yeah. Well, you had worked hard and had a good thing there.
But we had a good, yeah, it was a real good relationship in the store. Ford never had any trouble.
Well, that is good. Well, is there anything else that we can add
Well, you
to
can
the
talk all night.
to the Silsby story? The Silsby story. Well, it's interesting the connection of Ford's mother being a widow and coming here, and did she?
Well, see, her father and his wife were here.
Right, she came back really to be with her, have her parents help her.
And of course, Blanche was here, and her husband.
So let's see, I think I have about her age. She died fairly young.
49,
Yeah.
something like that.
We have covered most everything.
I think you've got enough there for a long time.
Okay, well, what are you gonna miss most about Roscommon, do you think?
People,
Your
the
friends.
church.
Yeah. Well, we wish you well in your new surroundings.
It'll be different.
Yeah.
when I'm on the show in the afternoon, I'll think of you people out here working or
Yeah, yeah.
riding and saying, gee, it'd be nice if I could go this afternoon.
Right.
Yeah.
You must come back and visit.
Oh, I will. I will.
Okay, I think I'll read this thing that you wrote, or would you like to read it?
Oh, I don't.
Okay, this is the Silsby, this is, what Marguerite wrote for the Historical Society. The Silsby's part in Roscommon. Great-grandfather Isaac Milton Silsby, 1830 to 1902, born in New York, died in Weberville, Michigan. While living in Gladwin, he contracted to build the Roscommon School about 1879, which is now the Masonic Temple building. The school was a two-story building with 5 rooms. 1880, he contracted to build the old courthouse, which since has been torn down, for $1,500. He also contracted to build the Catholic Church for $225. The Church Society was to furnish the material. It was near the corner of 6th and Lake Street. The building was 28 by 40 feet. The new church now sits on that property. He also built the first large hotel on Mackinac Island, and it later burned down. Ford's grandfather was Charles Edward Silsby, grandfather on his mother's side. And his father was Isaac. I don't know how Charles came to live in Roscommon. He worked in the woods, but had to quit because of a heart condition. He had a farm on County Line 2 miles north and west of Roscommon. He later sold the farm and moved into town on Brook Street and started a hay and feed store. In summer, he bought huckleberries, 5 to 6 cents a pound. They had to be cleaned, and shipped them to Butel, is that B-U-E?
B-U-T-E-L.
Canning Company in Bay City. Charles married Emma R. Clark, 1863 to 1925. Maud Ella Silsby, 1881 to 1931, one of Charles's daughters, the other being Blanche Silsby Lockery, 1881 to 1954. Were they twins?
No.
Oh, we have there's birth dates the same year. Maud E. married Fred James Silsby. Fred's father was a child of Mrs. Hildreth Henry, who she had before she married Isaac, and Isaac had adopted him. Maud and Fred lived in Cottage Grove, Highland Park, Michigan, in a house his dad Henry built. Fred worked for Royal Typewriter Company in Detroit because of severe headaches, moved to Weberville and farming with 2 of his brothers. Fooling around, he was pierced in the temple with a pitchfork and died the following day. Maud moved back to live with her parents on Brook Street. The home now belongs to Waterman. Maud worked for Alice Marsh, County Treasurer's office. She gave her dad Charles's $3,000 insurance money so he could build the Colonial Theater adjacent to their home on Brook Street, across the street facing Main Street. Charles loved moving pictures and always sat in the first row. His laugh could be heard all over and people enjoyed it. He died 3 years later, and Maud operated the theater for 1 year. Ford was to take care of the generators morning and evening. Ford's sister Fern played the piano on weekends. Ford remembered one time she played church music. Charles's wife, Emmer, carried on the feed store until she was taken ill. About to be discharged from Grayling Hospital, she fell and broke her hip. She never survived the operation. After the theater was over, the building was turned into a hotel. Blanche operated the hotel and did the cooking. I remember eating there, and the food was really great. She gave me her pancake recipe, but I never came near making them to taste like hers. Maud worked in the restaurant after work at times to help out, and Fern also waited table at times. I don't know just when Woody took over. It was sometime around 1932 when the hotel was moved to 5th Street. Maud passed away near the end of Ford's first year at college at Michigan State. She developed pneumonia. Ford was heartbroken. Fern married Willard Williams shortly after. Sandy, the younger brother, went to Mason to live with Uncle Hugh and Aunt Ethel for the next 5 years. He was 13 years old at the time of his mother's death. It was rough, as Hugh had 4 boys and was quite strict. Fern and Willard always lived in Roscommon. Ford went to school for another year, then had to quit for lack of money. He did go back to school and graduated in forestry in 1930. Went out west to South Dakota to work, but found it lonesome in the fire towers. Came back to Detroit and couldn't get a job in forestry. Did odd jobs. I, Marguerite Sangster Silsby, met him in February, and we were married in December 1937. We bought a house, and he was drafted. 2.5 years, a good part of the time overseas. In 1945, he was discharged, and we moved to Roscommon to start a dime store, which did not materialize. In June, Ford and Woody had a chance to buy the Au Sable store. Ford operated it for the next 25 years. He retired in 1971, and we traveled and spent winters in Florida. Ford passed away July 1997. We would have been married 60 years in December. Shortly, I will be moving to Commerce, Michigan, to be near our daughter Loretta and Darrell Reese and their 2 daughters, Kimberly and Kristen. I have sold my house on 7th Street to the Catholic Church. I will surely miss this house after 53 years, the town and the people here, especially Dawn Worth, my neighbor, and her friend David Nye. They helped me through last winter and a broken hip, cut my grass and do any repairs I need, and just good friends. The last Silsby saying goodbye, Roscommon. Now we're talking about a cottage on Mackinac Island.
Yes, it was a McGulpin cabin, and it was discovered that the original cabin had been built on, so they couldn't buy the property from the man. So what they did, they bought the house and had to move it, and they tore half all the other addition off and just kept the original cabin, and it is now at the port. And this was McGulpins during the war baked bread for the army. That was their
During what war?
well, probably French wars, early wars.
Okay,
This
up
would
on
be-
the island then.
Yeah, back now, and this would be the French wars real early.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause, T and Frank, my youngest sister and her husband, traced our genealogy back for 225 years.
Oh,
The McGulpins lived on Grosse Point on a farm, and they moved up north. And through the line, the McGulpins married into the Lapierres. And the Lapierres, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather, the Alopistus Lapierre, was born in this cabin.
on the island,
Yeah, on the island.
for heaven's
So-
sake.
And then my grandfather moved down to Sheboygan. And that's where my mother was born, or there, or Charlevoix, I'm not real sure, but it's in that area.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my dad met my mother.
Hmm.
And then they came to Detroit and got married.